What happens when the most powerful galactic empire in known history decides to crush a small blue planet on the edge of nowhere? What occurs when beings who have conquered 1,000 worlds meet a species that has spent its entire existence fighting itself? The Zephyrian Empire ruled half the galaxy for over 2 millennia. Their fleets could glass entire star systems. Their technology was beyond comprehension. Their armies had never known defeat. When they detected strange energy signatures from a primitive world called Earth, they expected another easy conquest. They were wrong. Dead wrong. In just 72 hours, humanity didn't just survive the Empire's assault. They annihilated it so completely that the galaxy still whispers about it in terrified awe. This is not a story about underdogs getting lucky. This is about what happens when apex predators disguised as prey finally show their true nature. The Empire struck at Earth expecting to find sheep. Instead, they woke up wolves who had been pretending to sleep. Warning: what you're about to read will change how you think about humanity's place in the universe forever. Admiral Marcus Chin stood in the observation deck of Luna Station, watching Earth rotate peacefully below. Coffee in hand, he reviewed the morning reports with the casual efficiency of someone who had done this routine for 20 years. Solar panel efficiency up 3%. Asteroid mining quotas exceeded. Another successful day in humanity's quiet expansion into their local solar system. The first anomaly appeared at 0847 hours. Admiral, called Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez from the communications station, her voice carrying an edge that made Chun set down his coffee. We're detecting massive gravitational disturbances at the edge of the solar system. Whatever's causing them is big. Really big. Chun moved to the main display, his trained eyes scanning the data streams. 40 years of military service had taught him to recognize trouble, and every instinct he possessed was screaming warnings. The gravitational signatures were unlike anything in their databases. They were artificial, structured, and they were moving toward Earth at a significant fraction of light speed. How many contacts? Chen asked, his voice steady despite the ice forming in his stomach. 12 primary signatures, sir. Each one roughly the size of Manhattan. And Admiral. Rodriguez paused, her face pale. There are smaller contacts. Thousands of them. The first visual confirmation arrived 30 minutes later. The telescopic images showed vessels that defied human understanding of engineering. Sleek, crystalline structures that seemed to bend light around them, leaving reality slightly blurred at their edges. They moved with purpose and coordination that spoke of technology centuries beyond anything humanity had achieved. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the station's chief xenobiology specialist, studied the approaching fleet with a mixture of terror and fascination. She had spent her career theorizing about first contact scenarios, but nothing in her research had prepared her for this reality. The ships were beautiful in an alien way, like living works of art that happened to be capable of interstellar travel. Admiral, she said quietly, I'm detecting energy signatures that suggest these vessels could sterilize our entire planet from orbit. The power readings are off any scale we have. Chen nodded grimly. He had already reached the same conclusion. Humanity was about to face its first contact with an alien civilization, and it was going to be anything but peaceful. The approaching fleet's formation and approach vector indicated hostile intent with military precision that needed no translation. General Patricia Hayes materialized on the communication screen from NORAD headquarters, her expression reflecting the gravity of the situation. Behind her, Chun could see the controlled chaos of a command center transitioning to full military alert. Marcus, what's our situation? Hayes asked without preamble. 12 capital ships, and what appears to be a massive support fleet approaching at high velocity, Chun reported. Their technology is clearly superior to ours. Energy readings suggest they could reduce Earth to ash without significant effort. Hayes was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. Recommendations? Chun looked out at Earth, thinking of the 8 billion people going about their daily lives, unaware that their world was about to change forever. Children heading to school, scientists working in laboratories, farmers tending crops, all of them blissfully ignorant that humanity was about to face an extinction-level threat. We fight, he said simply. Even if we can't win, we make them pay for every inch. The alien fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the orbit of Pluto, their arrival creating gravitational waves that registered on every sensitive instrument in the solar system. The lead vessel immediately began transmitting on multiple frequencies, the message clearly intended for any intelligent life in the system. When the translation algorithms finally decoded the transmission, the message was brief and devastating. Primitive species of the third planet. You have developed technology that violates galactic law. Your world will be cleansed. Resistance will only increase your suffering. You have one rotation of your planet to surrender unconditionally. Dr. Warren stared at the translation, her mind reeling. Galactic law? They're talking like there's some kind of interstellar government we've violated without knowing it. What law could we have possibly broken? Chen asked. We've barely made it to our own moon. The answer came in the next transmission, this one more detailed. The aliens identified themselves as the Zephyrian Empire, self-appointed guardians of galactic peace for over 2,000 years. According to their message, humanity had developed what they termed probability manipulation technology, apparently referring to humanity's recent breakthroughs in quantum computing and theoretical physics. The Empire's logic was coldly simple. Any species that developed the ability to manipulate quantum probability without proper guidance inevitably became a galactic threat. In their experience, such species either destroyed themselves or became aggressive expansionists who threatened established galactic order. The solution was preemptive sterilization. They're going to wipe us out because we invented quantum computers, Dr. Warren said incredulously. This is like being executed for learning to make fire. Chen was already moving into action, his military training overriding his shock. Rodriguez, get me President Morrison immediately. Hayes, I need you to activate all defense protocols. Warren, I need you to analyze everything we can detect about their technology. We have less than 24 hours to figure out how to fight beings who see us as vermin. The president's response was swift and uncompromising. If humanity was going to die, they would die fighting. Every military asset on and around Earth began mobilizing with an efficiency born of countless drills and preparation scenarios that no one had really believed would ever be necessary. Captain Jake Sullivan received his orders while commanding the stealth frigate Invisible Hand in the asteroid belt. His mission was simple: get as close to the enemy fleet as possible and gather intelligence. As a former Navy SEAL who had transitioned to space operations, Sullivan understood the importance of knowing your enemy. What he discovered changed everything. The Zephyrian ships were indeed technologically superior, but they weren't invincible. More importantly, their formation and movement patterns suggested something that made Sullivan's heart race with possibility. The aliens were overconfident. They were approaching Earth like exterminators coming to spray for insects, not like a military force preparing for actual combat. Command, this is Sullivan. He transmitted on the encrypted channel. I'm detecting what appears to be minimal defensive postures. They're not expecting resistance. Repeat, they are not expecting meaningful resistance. Back on Luna Station, Chun felt the first stirring of hope since this nightmare began. Overconfidence had destroyed more powerful forces throughout history. If the aliens weren't prepared for a real fight, maybe humanity had a chance after all. The next 18 hours passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Every orbital facility became a fortress. Every spacecraft, no matter how civilian, was equipped with whatever weapons could be rapidly mounted. Most importantly, humanity's brightest minds worked desperately to find weaknesses in technology that seemed impossibly advanced. Dr. Sarah Kim, working in a laboratory buried deep beneath Tokyo, made the first breakthrough. The alien ship's energy signatures revealed they were powered by controlled singularities, artificial black holes that provided enormous energy, but also represented a catastrophic vulnerability if destabilized. If we can disrupt their containment fields, she explained to the Emergency Science Council, their own power sources will tear their ships apart from the inside. The plan that emerged was desperate, brilliant, and completely insane. Humanity would use every nuclear weapon in their arsenal, not as traditional explosives, but as delivery systems for quantum disruption devices hastily constructed from Earth's most advanced physics laboratories. As the alien fleet crossed Mars orbit, General Hayes stood in the Pentagon's command center, surrounded by screens showing defensive preparations across the globe. Every major city had been evacuated to underground shelters. Every military unit was in position. Humanity held its collective breath. "Admiral Chun," she said into her communicator, "you have authorization for Operation Last Stand." Chun looked out at Earth one final time, thinking of his daughter Sarah, who was somewhere in the Colorado bunkers with millions of other civilians. Then, he turned to his crew with the calm determination of a man who had accepted that he might not live to see tomorrow. "All units, this is Admiral Chun. Today we discover what we're really made of. Today we show the galaxy that humanity doesn't go quietly into any night. All units, engage the enemy." The battle for Earth was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. Commander Zextai of the Zephyrian Empire stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Eternal Dominion, watching the primitive blue world grow larger on his tactical display. In his 3 centuries of military service, he had overseen the cleansing of 47 worlds. This would be 48, and by far the easiest. The species on this planet hadn't even achieved faster-than-light travel. Their orbital installations were laughably primitive. Their weapons technology was barely beyond chemical explosives. Zextai estimated the entire operation would be complete within 6 rotations, leaving time for his fleet to investigate the interesting quantum signatures they had detected before moving on to their next assignment. "Deploy the subjugation protocols," he commanded his tactical officer. "Standard formation. The primitives may have some orbital defenses, but nothing that should delay us significantly." Lieutenant Kethmore, Zextai's second-in-command, reviewed the tactical data with the boredom of someone performing a routine task. "Sir, shall we broadcast the surrender ultimatum again? Some species become more cooperative when they understand the futility of resistance." "Proceed," Zextai agreed, "though I doubt these creatures possess the intelligence to recognize their situation." The transmission went out across all frequencies, delivered in the harsh, clicking language of the Empire. "Primitive inhabitants of the Third World, your time for surrender has expired. Prepare for cleansing. Your resistance will serve only to extend your suffering." On Luna Station, Admiral Chun received the translation and smiled grimly. "Rodriguez, broadcast our response on all frequencies." The message that went back to the alien fleet was brief and delivered in perfect military cadence. "Zephyrian Empire, this is Admiral Marcus Chun of the United Earth Defense Force. Your ultimatum is rejected. If you want our world, come and take it." Commander Zextai's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. "Spirited, at least. Kethmore, begin with the orbital installations. Once we eliminate their space-based assets, the planet itself will surrender quickly enough." The first wave of Zephyrian fighters launched from their carriers like metallic wasps emerging from crystalline hives. Each fighter was a masterpiece of technology, powered by microsingularities and armed with weapons that could reduce a city block to subatomic particles. Against Earth's primitive defenses, they expected to encounter no meaningful resistance. Captain Maria Vasquez led the first human response from her position commanding the orbital defense platform Aegis 7. Her platform was officially classified as a mining facility, equipped with industrial lasers designed for asteroid processing. What the aliens didn't know was that humanity had spent the last 18 hours converting every piece of civilian equipment into improvised weapons. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, her weapons officer reported. Multiple fighters approaching at high velocity. All platforms, this is Vasquez. Execute Hammer Protocol. Show them what human stubbornness looks like." The first alien fighter to enter weapons range expected to face primitive projectile weapons or, at most, basic energy beams. Instead, it encountered something completely unprecedented, a focused stream of superheated plasma generated by mining lasers that had been overcharged far beyond their design specifications. The fighter's shields, designed to deflect conventional weapons, struggled against the raw thermal energy. More importantly, the pilot experienced something that no Zephyrian had felt in combat for over a millennium: genuine surprise. "Command, this is Alpha 7, the pilot transmitted. The primitives are using industrial equipment as weapons. Effectiveness is unexpectedly high." Commander Zextai's attention focused on the tactical display with growing interest. The humans were indeed using mining equipment, construction lasers, and even modified cargo haulers as combat platforms. It was crude, improvised, and absolutely should not have been effective against Zephyrian technology. Yet somehow it was working. The secret lay not in the equipment itself, but in how humans used it. Where Zephyrian pilots flew with mechanical precision, following established combat algorithms refined over centuries, human pilots fought with chaotic creativity that defied prediction. They used debris fields as cover, converted cargo containers into kinetic weapons, and employed tactics that no civilized species would consider. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez, piloting a converted asteroid tug, demonstrated this principle perfectly. When 3 Zephyrian fighters cornered her vessel, she did something that violated every principle of space combat. She vented her life support atmosphere to create a temporary sensor cloud, then used her industrial cutting beam to slice through an abandoned satellite, sending debris spinning into her attacker's flight path. The Zephyrian fighters, programmed to avoid collision damage, automatically adjusted their positions to avoid the debris. Rodriguez had anticipated this response and was waiting in the gap with her cutting beam fully charged. The first fighter died before its pilot understood what had happened. Primitive tactics, Commander Zextai observed, but his tone carried less certainty than before. Kethmore, deploy the second wave. Overwhelm them with superior numbers. Dr. Elizabeth Warren watched the battle from Luna Station's observation deck, her scientific mind analyzing everything she witnessed. The aliens were clearly more advanced, but they fought like a professional army confronting guerrilla fighters. They had doctrine, training, and superior equipment. Humans had desperation, creativity, and absolutely nothing to lose. Admiral, she called to Chun, I'm seeing patterns in their responses. They're reacting to our tactics like they've never encountered anything like this before. Chun nodded grimly. Because they haven't. Every species they've conquered probably fought the way they expected. We're fighting like humans. The second wave of alien fighters encountered a defense that had evolved even in the short time since the first engagement. Human commanders, linked by quantum communication systems, shared every tactic that worked and discarded everything that didn't. The defense platforms began working in coordinated groups, using their industrial equipment in combinations that pushed improvisation to the level of art. Captain Jake Sullivan's stealth frigate Invisible Hand provided the battle's first major surprise. While the aliens focused on the orbital platforms, Sullivan had positioned his ship among the space debris surrounding Earth, powering down all systems and drifting like another piece of junk. When a Zephyrian cruiser passed within range, Sullivan activated his ship's experimental quantum torpedo, a weapon that shouldn't have existed for another 50 years, hastily constructed from components meant for deep space communications. The torpedo didn't damage the alien ship's hull. Instead, it did something far worse. It destabilized the quantum containment field maintaining the ship's power core. The cruiser Void Serpent had been in service for over 300 years. Its power systems had never failed, never fluctuated, never given any cause for concern. When the containment field collapsed, the artificial black hole that powered the ship began consuming the vessel from the inside. Commander Zextai watched in horror as one of his capital ships simply ceased to exist, consumed by its own power source in less than 30 seconds. How is this possible? What weapon could destabilize a quantum containment field? Dr. Sarah Kim, monitoring the battle from her laboratory beneath Tokyo, allowed herself a moment of fierce satisfaction. Her theoretical calculations had worked. The aliens' power systems, for all their sophistication, were vulnerable to specific quantum frequencies that disrupted their containment fields. Admiral Chun, she transmitted to Luna Station, we can hurt them. The quantum disruption principle works. I'm transmitting targeting frequencies to all units now. The revelation that their ships could be destroyed by primitive technology sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian fleet. For the first time in over a millennium, they faced an enemy that could actually kill them. Sir, Lieutenant Kethmore reported, his voice carrying an edge that Zextai had never heard before. We've lost 3 cruisers and 17 fighters. The primitives are using some form of quantum disruption weapon. Zextai's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of stress among his species. Impossible. They barely understand quantum mechanics. How could they develop weapons that target our power systems? The answer came from an unexpected source. Commander Yurikstau of the Science Vessel Knowledge Seeker had been monitoring human communications and made a discovery that changed everything. "Commander Zextai," she transmitted, "I believe I understand what's happening. These humans are not following any established pattern of technological development. They're improvising solutions in real time, using principles they discovered only days ago. They're not just fighting us, they're evolving their technology during the battle itself." The concept was so alien to Zephyrian thinking that Zextai struggled to process it. The Empire had developed their technology over millennia, refining each advancement through careful study and testing. The idea that a species could make revolutionary breakthroughs while under attack seemed impossible. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Human defense platforms that had been using crude mining lasers in the first wave were now employing quantum-enhanced weapons that could threaten Zephyrian capital ships. Their tactics were becoming more sophisticated with each passing hour. "Admiral," Dr. Warren reported from Luna Station, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups from their main fleet. I think they're preparing to end this quickly." Chen nodded. The aliens had realized they were in an actual fight, and they were about to bring their full power to bear. The question was whether humanity could survive what came next. "All units," Chen broadcast, "they're done playing with us. This is where we find out if we're as tough as we think we are." On Earth below, 8 billion people huddled in shelters and bunkers, watching live feeds from the battle above their world. They saw their improvised defense force fighting impossible odds with courage that defied rational explanation. They saw ordinary men and women using mining equipment and cargo haulers to challenge the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. And for the first time since the aliens arrived, they began to believe that humanity might actually have a chance. Commander Zextai prepared to unleash the full power of the Zephyrian Empire, but something had changed in his calculations. These weren't primitives facing inevitable extinction. These were predators who had been disguising themselves as prey. The real battle was about to begin. Deep beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex, President Elizabeth Morrison stood before a wall of displays showing the battle raging above Earth. Each screen told the same story. Humanity was outgunned, outnumbered, and fighting for survival against technology centuries beyond their own. Yet somehow, impossibly, they were still fighting. "Ma'am," General Hayes said quietly, "our orbital defenses are holding, but barely. The aliens haven't committed their main fleet yet. When they do." Morrison nodded. She understood the mathematics of the situation. Humanity had surprised the aliens, bloodied them, even destroyed several of their ships. But the Zephyrian Empire commanded technology that could crack planets. Earth's improvised defenses, no matter how courageously wielded, could not hold against the full power of an interstellar empire, unless they changed the rules of the game entirely. "General, is Operation Pandora ready?" Hayes hesitated. Operation Pandora represented humanity's most desperate gambit, a plan so dangerous that it could destroy Earth even if it succeeded. The quantum resonance network is in place. Every nuclear weapon on the planet has been modified with Dr. Kim's resonance triggers. "But, ma'am, if we're wrong about the frequency calculations, we'll find out together," Morrison said grimly. "Give the order." Commander Zextai studied the tactical displays with growing frustration. The primitive species had proven far more resourceful than anticipated, but the Empire's patience was exhausted. It was time to demonstrate why the Zephyrian fleet had never known defeat. "All ships," he commanded, "deploy the World Breaker formation. Target their orbital installations first, then focus planetary bombardment on population centers. I want this cleansing completed within the next rotation." The Zephyrian dreadnoughts moved into position with the terrible grace of apex predators. Each ship carried weapons capable of shattering moons. Their combined firepower could reduce Earth's crust to molten slag within hours. As the formation aligned, space itself seemed to hold its breath. On Luna Station, Admiral Chun watched the alien battle line form and felt ice settle in his chest. Every military instinct told him that humanity was about to face annihilation. The improvised defenses that had held so far were about to meet the full fury of an interstellar empire. "All units," he broadcast on the command frequency. "They're bringing everything they have. This is our last stand. Make it count." Captain Sullivan, still hidden among the debris field with his stealth frigate, recognized the formation from his intelligence gathering. The aliens were preparing to glass the entire planet. But they had made one crucial mistake. They were concentrating their entire fleet in a tight formation to maximize their firepower. "Command," he transmitted, "they're bunching up for planetary bombardment. If Dr. Kim's calculations are correct, this might be our only chance." Dr. Sarah Kim watched from her laboratory as data streams showed the quantum resonance network coming online. Every nuclear weapon on Earth had been modified to emit specific frequencies designed to destabilize the aliens' power systems. The plan was theoretically sound, but had never been tested on this scale. "President Morrison," she reported, "the network is ready. But I have to warn you, if we're wrong about their containment frequencies, we'll be detonating every nuclear weapon on Earth simultaneously." Morrison looked at the battle displays one final time. Above her world, brave men and women were dying to buy Earth these precious few minutes. The least she could do was match their courage. "Dr. Kim, execute Operation Pandora. All frequencies, maximum power." The quantum resonance pulse began as a whisper in space, transmitted from hidden arrays scattered across Earth's surface. Each nuclear weapon had been converted into a quantum broadcaster, creating a network that spanned the entire planet. When the signals synchronized, they produced something that had never existed before, a planetary-scale quantum disruption field. Commander Zextai noticed the energy readings just as his fleet prepared to open fire. "Science Division, what is that phenomenon?" "I'm detecting massive quantum fluctuations from the planet's surface." The response came too late to matter. The resonance pulse reached the Zephyrian fleet traveling at the speed of light, washing over their ships like an invisible tide. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the Eternal Dominion's power core destabilized. The flagship of the Zephyrian fleet had served for over 400 years. Its quantum containment systems were the finest technology in the galaxy, maintained by engineers who had never known failure. When the resonance pulse disrupted the containment field, the artificial black hole that powered the ship began consuming everything around it. "Emergency evacuation," Zextai screamed as his bridge tilted at impossible angles. All hands abandoned ship. But there was nowhere to run. The Eternal Dominion collapsed into its own power source, taking Commander Zextai and 3,000 crew members with it. Around the fleet, 11 more capital ships suffered the same fate as their power cores destabilized simultaneously. Lieutenant Kethmore, commanding the science vessel Knowledge Seeker, watched in horror as the greatest fleet in the galaxy began destroying itself. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were being consumed by their own power sources. The Primitives had turned the Empire's greatest strength into their ultimate weakness. "All ships, emergency scatter," he transmitted. "Abandon formation. Emergency power shut down." But the quantum resonance field was already dissipating, and the damage was done. 12 capital ships, and their entire escort fleets had been reduced to expanding clouds of plasma and exotic matter. The most powerful military force in the galaxy had been crippled by a species that hadn't even achieved interstellar flight. On Earth, 8 billion people watched in stunned silence as the alien fleet tore itself apart. The impossible had happened. Humanity had not merely survived the Empire's assault, they had shattered it completely. Admiral Chen stared at his tactical displays, barely believing what he was seeing. "Rodriguez, confirm those readings. How many enemy ships are left?" "Sir, I'm reading 17 vessels, mostly support craft and science ships. The entire battle fleet has been destroyed." Dr. Warren joined Chun at the tactical display, her scientific mind struggling to process what had just occurred. "Admiral, we've just witnessed the destruction of the most powerful fleet in known galactic history. The Empire sent their best ships, their most experienced crews, and we annihilated them in under 6 minutes. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not simply won a battle. They had demonstrated that the Zephyrian Empire could be defeated. More than that, they had done it using principles that the Empire's own technology couldn't defend against. Lieutenant Kethmore, now the senior surviving officer of what had been the galaxy's most feared fleet, faced a decision that would reshape interstellar politics. The Primitives had proven themselves to be far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Their technology was primitive, but Their approach to warfare was unlike anything the Empire had encountered. Remaining ships, he transmitted, begin emergency withdrawal. Transmit all battle data to High Command. Priority 1 communication. The Earth species represents a Class 7 existential threat. Captain Sullivan watched the surviving alien ships begin to retreat and felt a fierce satisfaction. Command, the enemy is withdrawing. Shall we pursue? Chen considered the question carefully. Humanity had achieved the impossible, but their defenses were exhausted, their orbital platforms damaged, and their quantum resonance network would need days to recharge. More importantly, they had just announced their presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. Negative, Captain. Let them run. We need to prepare for what comes next. President Morrison emerged from the Cheyenne Mountain bunker to find a world transformed. In the span of a few hours, humanity had gone from an unknown species on the galaxy's edge to the civilization that had shattered the Zephyrian Empire. The victory was complete, but it came with consequences that no one had anticipated. General Hayes, Morrison said as they stood in the morning sunlight. What's our status? Ma'am, we've confirmed the destruction of 12 alien capital ships and their escort fleets. Our casualties were lighter than projected. We lost 7 orbital platforms and took some damage to Luna Station, but the Earth itself is untouched. Morrison nodded, but her expression remained serious. And now the galaxy knows we exist. The Empire will be back, probably with allies, and they'll be ready for our tricks this time. Dr. Kim joined the group, carrying data tablets filled with analysis from the battle. Ma'am, we've learned more about alien technology in the last 6 hours than we could have discovered in decades of peaceful contact. Their ships use quantum containment systems that are vulnerable to specific frequency disruption. More importantly, we now understand the basic principles behind faster-than-light travel. The revelation hit Morrison like a physical blow. You're saying we can build starships now? Not just starships, ma'am. The alien debris contains intact components from some of the most advanced technology in the galaxy. We can reverse engineer their capabilities and probably improve on them. The Empire made one crucial mistake. They assumed we couldn't learn from their technology. Admiral Chen looked up at the sky where the debris from the alien fleet still glowed like artificial stars. So what happens now? Morrison smiled, and there was something predatory in her expression. Now we stop being prey. We take the fight to them. The battle for Earth was over. Humanity had won completely and decisively, proving that even the greatest empire could fall to the right combination of desperation, ingenuity, and sheer bloody-minded determination. But victory had a price. The galaxy now knew that Earth existed, and, more importantly, that humans were dangerous. The Empire would return, probably with allies, and they would be prepared for humanity's unconventional tactics. What they wouldn't be prepared for was the species that had spent its entire history fighting itself finally, turning that same ferocity against an external enemy. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human expansion was about to begin. 6 months after the battle that shattered the Zephyrian Empire's finest fleet, the Sol system had transformed into humanity's first fortress world. Where once mining platforms had processed asteroids for rare metals, massive shipyards now constructed vessels that combined human innovation with alien technology. The debris field from the destroyed enemy fleet had provided a treasure trove of advanced components, and human engineers had proven remarkably adept at understanding and improving upon designs that had taken the Empire centuries to develop. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's first interstellar warship, the UES Retribution. The vessel was a hybrid of human engineering and alien technology, powered by a quantum core reverse-engineered from Zephyrian ships, but controlled by systems that no alien mind could have conceived. Where the Empire built ships according to established patterns refined over millennia, humans built ships to win wars. Admiral, Captain Sullivan reported from his position at the tactical station. Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements in the Kepler 442 system. Intelligence suggests the Empire is gathering their remaining forces for a counterattack. Chen nodded. They had expected this. The destruction of the Empire's expeditionary fleet had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy, but it had also made humanity a target for every remaining Imperial force. The Empire couldn't allow the precedent of their defeat to stand unchallenged. "How many ships are we looking at, Jake?" Sullivan consulted his displays, his expression grim. "Conservative estimate? 300 capital ships, plus support vessels. They're not taking any chances this time." The numbers were staggering. Humanity had managed to construct 12 warships in 6 months, each one more advanced than anything in their pre-contact navy, but still vastly outnumbered by what the Empire was bringing to bear. On paper, it should have been another massacre, this time with humanity on the receiving end. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, now serving as the fleet's xenobiology and tactical analysis officer, studied the intelligence reports with fascination rather than fear. "Admiral, I'm seeing patterns in their fleet composition that suggest they're preparing for the tactics we used during the first battle. They've modified their formations to prevent quantum resonance cascades, and their ships are maintaining much greater distances from each other." "So they learned from their mistakes," Chen observed. "Good. That means they're taking us seriously." President Morrison's voice crackled over the secure communication link from Earth. "Admiral, what's our strategic assessment?" Chen looked out at the fleet humanity had built in just 6 months. 12 ships against 300. By every conventional military calculation, it was hopeless. But humanity had stopped thinking conventionally the moment they realized they were fighting for their survival. "Ma'am, we're outnumbered 25-1. By Imperial standards, this should be a foregone conclusion." Chen paused, allowing himself a slight smile. Of course, Imperial standards didn't account for human tactical thinking. The plan that humanity had developed over the past 6 months was audacious even by human standards. Instead of waiting for the Empire to attack Earth again, they would take the fight to Imperial space. Operation Deep Strike called for the human fleet to bypass the massing Imperial forces entirely and strike directly at the Empire's core worlds. It was the kind of plan that no rational species would attempt. It required traveling through hostile space, attacking targets that were supposedly impregnable, and doing it all while outnumbered by ratios that made victory mathematically impossible. It was, in other words, exactly the kind of plan that humans excelled at executing. Dr. Sarah Kim, now aboard the Retribution as the fleet's chief technology officer, made final adjustments to the quantum disruption systems that had proven so effective against Imperial ships. But she had improved on the original design, incorporating alien technology to create something that even the Empire's engineers couldn't have imagined. "Admiral," she reported, "the enhanced quantum disruption array is ready. We can now target specific systems within enemy ships rather than just destabilizing their power cores. We could disable their weapons, their shields, even their life support systems with pinpoint accuracy." Chen nodded approvingly. The ability to disable rather than destroy opened up tactical possibilities that went far beyond simple ship-to-ship combat. "What about their new countermeasures?" Kim's smile was predatory. "They're designed to prevent resonance cascades. They have no defense against focused quantum manipulation. It's like they built armor to stop bullets, and we developed lasers." Commander Yurikstow, one of the few surviving Zephyrian officers from the first battle, watched the human fleet's departure from her detention facility on Luna Station. As a prisoner of war, she had been treated with surprising courtesy by the humans, but she had also been a witness to their preparations for the coming conflict. What she had observed terrified her more than any torture could have. The humans didn't just build ships, they engineered solutions to specific problems. Every vessel in their fleet was designed to exploit particular weaknesses in Imperial technology that most species wouldn't even recognize as vulnerabilities. They had studied the debris from destroyed Imperial ships with an intensity that bordered on obsession, learning lessons that the Empire's own engineers had never considered. More frightening still was their approach to warfare itself. The Empire fought according to established doctrines, refined through countless conflicts, but fundamentally unchanged for centuries. Humans fought like they were trying to solve a puzzle, adapting their tactics in real time based on what worked and discarding what didn't. "They're going to win," she whispered to herself, hardly believing the words even as she spoke them. The human fleet entered hyperspace using technology that hadn't existed 6 months earlier. The faster-than-light drives were based on Imperial designs but had been modified with human innovations that made them faster, more efficient, and far more difficult to detect. Where Imperial ships traveled through hyperspace along established routes that could be monitored and predicted, human ships moved through dimensions that the Empire didn't even know existed. Captain Maria Vasquez, commanding the heavy cruiser New Horizon, monitored her ship's systems as they traveled toward their first target. The Zephyrian industrial world of Kethvar served as one of the Empire's primary shipbuilding centers, protected by orbital defense platforms that had never been seriously challenged. "Captain," her tactical officer reported, "we're approaching the target system." Long-range scans show 12 defense platforms and a garrison fleet of 37 ships. Vasquez studied the tactical display with professional interest. The odds were roughly 3-1 against her single ship, which by Imperial standards should have made victory impossible. The Empire's commanders had probably never considered that someone might be suicidal enough to attack a core world with a single vessel. They were about to learn the difference between suicidal and creative. The New Horizon dropped out of hyperspace not at the edge of the system, where defenders expected attacks to originate, but directly in the middle of the defense fleet. Vasquez had used human modifications to Imperial technology to achieve a precision jump that should have been impossible with their navigational computers. "All weapons, open fire," she commanded calmly. "Target their command ship first." The human ship's quantum disruption array reached out across space with invisible fingers, finding the Imperial command vessel and selectively disabling its communication systems, weapons, and maneuvering thrusters. Within seconds, the flagship of the defense fleet was drifting helplessly, unable to coordinate a response or even call for reinforcements. The remaining Imperial ships tried to respond, but they faced a problem that their tactical training had never anticipated. The human ship was using their own formation against them, positioning itself so that any attack would risk hitting other Imperial vessels. Meanwhile, the quantum disruption array methodically disabled ship after ship with surgical precision. Captain Vasquez watched 36 Imperial warships rendered helpless in the span of 12 minutes. It was, by any measure, the most one-sided naval engagement in galactic history. But she wasn't finished yet. "Helm, take us to the orbital platforms. Weapons, prepare for surface bombardment." The defense platforms that protected Kethvar were engineering marvels, armed with weapons that could crack continents, and shielded by barriers that could withstand stellar radiation. They had defended the world for over 800 years without ever being seriously threatened. The New Horizon destroyed them in 18 minutes. The quantum disruption array found the platform's power cores and overloaded them simultaneously. 12 fortresses that had stood guard over one of the Empire's most important worlds vanished in brilliant flashes of unleashed energy. The industrial facilities on the planet's surface, suddenly, unprotected, transmitted frantic surrender signals that Vasquez ignored. "Communications, transmit our message to the planetary government," she commanded. The message was simple and delivered in perfect Imperial standard. "This is Captain Maria Vasquez of the United Earth Defense Force. Your orbital defenses have been eliminated. Your garrison fleet has been disabled. Your world is defenseless. You have one rotation to begin evacuating all military personnel and equipment. Any attempt to rebuild military capabilities will result in the complete sterilization of this system. This is your only warning." Across the Empire, similar messages were being delivered to industrial worlds, military academies, and research facilities. The human fleet had struck simultaneously at dozens of targets, demonstrating a level of coordination and tactical sophistication that Imperial strategists had believed impossible. High Admiral Thexnall, commander of the Empire's remaining forces, received reports of the attacks from his flagship in the Kepler 442 system. Each report was more devastating than the last. Entire defense fleets disabled without firing a shot. Orbital fortifications that had stood for centuries reduced to scrap metal. Industrial worlds surrendering without resistance rather than face complete annihilation. "How many targets?" he asked his intelligence officer. 47 confirmed attacks, sir. All successful. No human casualties reported." Thexnall's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed the implications. The humans had not simply attacked Imperial territory. They had demonstrated that the Empire's defenses were completely ineffective against human technology and tactics. More importantly, They had done it while the Empire's main fleet was massing for a counterattack on Earth. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It's being broadcast on all frequencies across the Empire." The message came from Admiral Chun, standing on the bridge of the Retribution with Earth visible in the background. "Hi, Admiral Thexnall. This is Admiral Marcus Chun of the United Earth Defense Force. By now you've received reports of our operations in Imperial space. We have demonstrated that your defenses cannot stop us, your fleets cannot defeat us, and your technology cannot protect you." Chun paused, allowing the implications to sink in. "However, we are not conquerors. We are defenders who refuse to be victims. Withdraw your fleet from Earth space, cease all hostile operations against humanity, and we will discuss terms for a permanent peace. Continue your aggression, and we will systematically dismantle every Imperial facility in the galaxy until nothing remains but empty worlds and bitter memories." The transmission ended, leaving Thexnall staring at displays showing the wreckage of Imperial power scattered across dozens of star systems. The humans had proven their point with devastating clarity. The Empire could not win a war against Earth. More than that, they couldn't even defend themselves effectively. For the first time in over 2 millennia, the Zephyrian Empire faced an enemy that it could not defeat through superior technology or overwhelming force. The humans fought according to rules that the Empire had never learned, using tactics that their military academies had never conceived. The age of Imperial dominance was ending, and humanity had barely gotten started. 1 year after the first shot was fired at Earth, High Admiral Thexnall of the Zephyrian Empire stood aboard his flagship in neutral space, preparing for negotiations that would have been unthinkable just months before. The most powerful military force in the galaxy was about to surrender to a species that hadn't even known aliens existed 2 years ago. The human delegation arrived in a single ship, the UES Diplomacy, a vessel that looked deceptively peaceful until you noticed the quantum disruption arrays disguised as communication equipment, and the fact that its escort included ships that had single-handedly destroyed entire Imperial fleets. Admiral Chin walked into the conference chamber with the easy confidence of someone who held all the cards. Behind him came President Morrison, Dr. Kim, and a small group of advisors who had helped orchestrate humanity's rise from unknown species to galactic superpower in less than 18 months. "Hi, Admiral," Chin said with polite formality. "Thank you for accepting our invitation to discuss terms." Thexnall's mandibles clicked nervously as he studied the humans across the negotiation table. Intelligence reports described them as primitive beings who had stumbled onto advanced technology through luck and desperation. What he saw instead were apex predators who had been temporarily disguised as prey, now revealing their true nature to a galaxy that had forgotten what real danger looked like. "Admiral Chun," Thexnall replied, his translator rendering his words in crisp English. "The Empire is prepared to discuss a cessation of hostilities. We acknowledge that continued conflict serves neither of our peoples." President Morrison leaned forward slightly, her expression pleasant, but her eyes hard as steel. "Hi, Admiral. Let's be clear about what we're discussing here. This isn't a negotiation between equals. This is us explaining to you how the galaxy is going to work from now on." The bluntness of the statement sent ripples of shock through the Imperial delegation. Diplomatic protocol had been established over millennia of interstellar contact, and nobody spoke so directly to representatives of the Empire. Dr. Kim activated a holographic display showing star charts of the local galactic region. "We've identified 47 worlds that the Empire has cleansed over the past 1,000 years. Worlds where entire civilizations were exterminated because they developed technology you found threatening." Thexnall shifted uncomfortably. Those actions were necessary to maintain galactic stability. Species that develop dangerous technologies without proper guidance inevitably become threats to established order. "Whose order?" Morrison asked quietly. "Did anyone ask those species if they wanted to be part of your order? Did you offer them membership in your empire, or did you just decide they had to die?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. The Empire had never considered offering membership to species they deemed dangerous. The concept of integration rather than elimination was foreign to Imperial thinking. Chin stood and walked to the display, highlighting several star systems. These are the locations of your remaining military installations. We could destroy them whenever we choose. These are your core worlds, where billions of your people live in cities that couldn't survive a day without their orbital support infrastructure. We could turn them into museum pieces whenever we decide to. The threat was delivered with casual certainty that made it far more terrifying than any dramatic declaration. The humans weren't making threats they couldn't carry out. They were explaining reality to beings who had never been forced to confront their own vulnerability. "What do you want?" Thexnall asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We want you to stop being a galactic plague. No more cleansing of developing species. No more arbitrary rules about what technologies are too dangerous for primitive civilizations to possess. No more executing entire worlds because they might someday become inconvenient." "That's impossible," protested Commander Yethdau, Thexnall's chief military advisor. "Without proper oversight, dangerous species will develop weapons that could threaten the galaxy itself." Dr. Kim laughed, a sound that contained no humor at all. "You mean like the weapons we developed to destroy your fleets? The ones you're so afraid of that you're sitting here negotiating instead of fighting?" The observation struck home. The Empire's entire justification for their genocidal policies was the threat posed by uncontrolled technological development, yet they had been completely defeated by exactly that kind of uncontrolled innovation. Shin returned to his seat and activated another display, this one showing tactical analyses of recent battles. "Let me explain something about human military doctrine. We study our enemies, we identify their weaknesses, and we develop specific solutions to specific problems. Your technology is advanced, but it's predictable. Your tactics are refined, but they're static. You fight the way you've always fought, assuming that superior numbers and better equipment will always win." He highlighted a series of engagements where single human ships had defeated entire Imperial fleets. "We adapt. Every battle teaches us something new about how to fight more effectively. Every enemy system we encounter gets added to our database of vulnerabilities to exploit. We don't just learn from our mistakes, we learn from yours." Thexnall stared at the tactical displays showing the systematic destruction of Imperial power across dozens of star systems. Each engagement demonstrated the same pattern. Human ships appearing where they shouldn't be, using weapons that shouldn't work, employing tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. "You fight like barbarians," he said finally. "No," Morrison corrected. "We fight like humans. There's a difference." The negotiations continued for 3 days, with the humans methodically dismantling every argument the Empire offered for maintaining their existing policies. The Imperial delegation tried to negotiate from positions of strength they no longer possessed, making demands based on power they could no longer project. Finally, Thexnall accepted the inevitable. "What are your terms?" Shin handed him a data tablet containing humanity's conditions for peace. As the High Admiral read, his mandibles began clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme distress among his species. The terms were comprehensive and non-negotiable. The Empire would immediately cease all cleansing operations against developing species. Any Imperial forces found attacking civilian populations would be considered pirates and dealt with accordingly. The Empire would provide reparations to any surviving populations from worlds they had attacked, in the form of technology transfers and industrial assistance. The Empire would recognize an exclusion zone around Earth extending 50 light-years in all directions. No Imperial ships would enter this space without explicit human permission. The Empire would provide complete technical specifications for all their military technology to human scientists, ostensibly for defensive research, but effectively ensuring that humanity could develop countermeasures to any future Imperial weapons. Most importantly, the Empire would recognize humanity's right to intervene in any situation where they judged that Imperial actions threatened galactic stability. "These terms are unacceptable," Thexnall protested. "You're asking us to surrender our sovereignty, our military capabilities, our entire reason for existing." Morrison's expression didn't change. "High Admiral, you seem to be operating under the mistaken belief that you have a choice in this matter. Let me clarify the situation. You can accept these terms and retain some measure of autonomy, or you can reject them and Watch us systematically dismantle your civilization piece by piece until nothing remains but archaeological ruins. To emphasize the point, Chen activated a display showing real-time footage from the imperial world of Zethkari, where human engineering teams were dismantling orbital defense platforms under the supervision of local authorities who had chosen cooperation over destruction. "We're not asking you to surrender," Chen explained patiently. "We're explaining to you how reality works now. The galaxy has a new apex predator, and it's not you." Thexnall looked around the table at his advisors, seeing his own defeat reflected in their expressions. The Empire had ruled through fear and superior technology for over 2 millennia, but they had never faced an enemy that surpassed them in both areas. "If we agree to these terms," he asked slowly, "what guarantee do we have that humanity won't simply eliminate us when it becomes convenient?" Morrison considered the question seriously. "You don't have any guarantees, just like all those species you exterminated didn't have any guarantees. The difference is that we're offering you a choice. Work with us to build a better galaxy, or be removed as an obstacle to that goal." Dr. Kim leaned forward, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had helped design weapons that could crack planets. "Hi, Admiral. Let me explain something about human nature. We're remarkably good at working with people who don't try to kill us. Every nation on Earth that has given up conquest as a policy has prospered under human protection. Every nation that has continued to threaten others has found itself reconsidered out of existence." The final negotiations took another 6 hours, with Imperial representatives trying desperately to salvage some vestige of their former power. But the humans had done their homework, identifying every Imperial weakness and cutting off every avenue of escape. When Thexnall finally signed the surrender documents, he was signing more than a peace treaty. He was acknowledging the end of one galactic age and the beginning of another. The ceremony was broadcast live across the galaxy, reaching civilizations that had spent centuries living in fear of Imperial fleets. For the first time in over 2,000 years, developing species could pursue technological advancement without worrying about cleansing operations. The oppressive weight of Imperial oversight was lifted from billions of beings who had never dared to hope for freedom. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth, Thexnall approached Admiral Chen privately. "What happens now? What does humanity plan to do with galactic dominance?" Chen looked out at the stars visible through the viewport, thinking of Earth and the 8 billion people who had trusted him to represent their interests. "We're going to do what we've always done. We're going to explore, we're going to learn, and we're going to protect what needs protecting. The difference is that now we have the power to make sure nobody stops us. And if other species develop dangerous technologies, then we'll evaluate them on a case-by-case basis," Chen replied. "But we won't commit genocide because we're afraid of competition. That's the difference between humans and your empire." The return journey to Earth took the human delegation through space that was already changing. Former imperial colonies were declaring independence, knowing that humanity would protect them from retaliation. Trade routes that had been controlled by imperial monopolies were opening to free commerce. Scientific research that had been suppressed for centuries was resuming on dozens of worlds. President Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Diplomacy, watching stars that had been part of an oppressive empire transform into beacons of possibility. "Marcus, do you think we did the right thing?" Chen joined her at the viewport, considering the question seriously. "Ma'am, a year ago we were a species that didn't know aliens existed. Today we're the dominant power in the galaxy. History will judge whether we use that power wisely. And if we become what we just defeated, then someone else will do to us what we just did to them," Chen replied. "That's how the universe maintains balance. The moment we start thinking we're indispensable is the moment we become the problem." As Earth grew larger in the viewport, Morrison reflected on humanity's rapid rise from unknown species to galactic power. They had proven that superior technology couldn't overcome superior tactics, that established power could fall to innovative thinking, and that sometimes the best defense really was an overwhelming offense. But, most importantly, they had proven that when prey finally stops running and turns to fight, predators discover they're not as apex as they thought. The age of human dominance had begun, but it was an age tempered by the knowledge that dominance was temporary and power was only as good as the wisdom with which it was wielded. In the depths of space, other civilizations were watching and learning, developing their own innovations, and preparing their own challenges to the new galactic order. Humanity had won this round, but the game was far from over. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never mistake restraint for weakness, never confuse civilization for pacifism, and never, ever assume that a species that has spent its entire history fighting itself won't know exactly what to do when someone else picks a fight. The Empire had struck at Earth expecting to find easy prey. Instead, they had awakened something that the galaxy had never seen before. Humans who were no longer pretending to be anything other than what they had always been. And that, more than any weapon or technology, was what had changed everything.